insane. And I'm so excited for what we have next. We have JP Zangre and Aaron Landgraf here to talk to you about not just like getting a seat at the executive table, but how you can earn a seat at the executive table. And before we came on here, I was talking about how before everything went virtual, it was always nice to go to the executive table because they always had the best snacks. So I don't know if anybody else can relate. If you can, please make sure that you put it in the comments. And yeah, go ahead and take it away, you guys.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, RevGenius, so much for inviting us to participate in this awesome event. It's our second time, and yeah, very excited to be here again. Just by way of introductions, my name is Aaron Landgraf. I'm the head of marketing at a company called Zangre, which we'll discuss in a little bit more detail towards the tail end of this presentation. I'm joined here today by JP. JP, if you want just quickly introducing yourself, that'd be great.
Hello, happy RevCon day one. JP here with Zangre, head of Rev and Operations. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And our topic for today's conversation, as Anna mentioned, is how RevOps professionals can earn that coveted seat at the executive table. And I hear it all the time for early to mid-career RevOps professionals. They're always asking, hey, how can I operate more strategically and less tactically? How can I earn that seat at the executive table? How can I do more effective data storytelling? We're going to talk about all those things over the course of this conversation, specifically through the lens of JP's real world experience. So with that as a backdrop, JP, let's just start. Like, tell us about your path to RevOps. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, RevOps. It's such a buzzy word right now, but I mean, guys, this is the same stuff that we've been doing even as operators or just as drivers of growth. For example, my first title out of college was database marketing, right? In the early 2000s. It's like, what the hell is that? It was really just marketing operations, right? I didn't realize it at the time, but I was processing data and normalizing data in Lotus approach. I don't know if that rings any bells or dates me. I did my first automation of a web to lead form in salesforce.com. And I was like, this is freaking cool. So I was doing data, I was doing automations. And again, I didn't realize it, but I was really doing operations. So since then I've realized, as operations has evolved, that modern operators are really technologists first, then mathematicians, and then insert line of business, marketing, sales, CS, even RevOps.
Yeah. And JP, one of my favorite things about you is that you always say salesforce.com. It's never Salesforce, always the full old school name of the platform. So fun.
Classic for life. No.
That's right. So I think what's so interesting about, your, RevOps mandate today is that you report to the CEO of Zangre. JP and I have the same boss, right? Why is that so important for you, JP?
I love this evolution of operators. So core revenue facing functions, marketing, sales, customer success. They all have their operators. That's how it's been working for the last decade or so. They have their executive stakeholders, and what they're trying to do is they're trying their best to maximize their impact for their line of business, for their stakeholders. But if you think about it, especially in smaller companies or even larger companies, who's ultimately responsible for the coordination of growth and initiatives that drive growth in the business? I mean, it's usually the CEO, because no other e-staff typically controls the majority of the levers of growth. So when you think about RevOps, it's not just introducing, another role to add to the organization. It's really being that driver of a data first approach and aligning all of the customer and revenue generating touch points across all functions. So the CEO really needs a driver and architect of revenue. Call it chief of staff, call it revenue architect, call it RevOps, but it's really that alignment to the CEO to achieve that sustainable growth.
Yeah, and what I've observed too is that it allows you to operate a bit like Switzerland, right? Like, if you were to, be reporting under me as a head of marketing, I would try to allow you to be a neutral party, but just by the nature of the reporting role, right, there would be some dynamic of you being on the marketing team that would influence how you report on cross-system data. So I think pulling the RevOps role out of a line of business and attaching it to a more neutral third party, call it the CEO, the COO, whatever it may be, I think is a really important, just like organizational decision that we're seeing more and more organizations rally behind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for you today, what are some of the key frameworks you use as a RevOps professional to get your job done?
Yeah, frameworks. That can mean so many things. All right, hot take. The funnel isn't dead. There's more time. Everybody's trying to do all this cool stuff with data, but the funnel isn't dead. Maybe the classic linear funnel that only looks at volume, and then gravity takes you down to the bottom of the funnel. With that type of framework, it's almost, I call it like a maniacal focus on generating leads and closing deals. Where is revenue in that? Revenue just ends. That's it. Just kind of like a black hole. So when you think about revenue ops, the framework that I like is still a funnel, but it's simple. I'm looking at velocity, I'm looking at conversion, and I'm looking at volume. So those three, not just lead to close, but from lead to cash all the way to recurring revenue. So that full journey. So every touch point from value, right? I'm showing the value on the sales and marketing side, and then I'm showing the impact on the customer success and recurring revenue side and growth side. So I'm looking at every single touch point. So that's my framework, is looking at my volume, conversion, and velocity throughout the entire customer journey. I don't care, wherever you want to capture it, just capture it, right? Every touch point must be captured somewhere. So are we finding that the data is hard to capture? Is it taking too much time? All right, cool. Automate it, right? But just capture it. Like I said, data first. In our recurring revenue business, it's impossible to scale without treating this framework of growth like a science. So I say, like, kind of RevOps are the scientists, really, of this intersection of data and workflows and automation and reporting. So that's really what the that intersection of data, reporting, and automation.
Yeah, makes total sense. The way I think about it too, as a marketing leader, is I'm being asked to think about and care about net dollar retention, right? Like, do our customers renew with us and do they grow? And if I'm just looking at my data in the context of a marketing funnel where I have leads that convert to opportunities that convert to closed won and dollars, like, that doesn't tell me anything about net dollar retention. So I have to get a different view into what's happening across more phases of the journey. And that's why I'm so excited to have a partner like JP in RevOps who can arm me with that information so that I can make better decisions as to where I invest as a marketing leader based on what happens to customers once they land, right?
Yeah.
JP, there's a question in the chat. I'll ask it directly, but we hear this all the time. What teams traditionally sit under RevOps versus marketing ops, or potentially digital marketing? I found it to be different across companies. I just laugh because we find the same thing, Lindsay. Absolutely. Every RevOps org is like a snowflake almost. But JP, how do you think about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really don't think there's a silver bullet answer here. Aaron, when we were at the CRO summit in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, I was asked the same question by CROs. Where do my operators sit, right? Some CMOs like their marketing operations people to report directly into them. What I've seen work, especially for hyper growth companies, is when RevOps owns the line of business, and to Aaron's point, a little bit more Switzerland, right? So with marketing or digital marketing, typically RevOps owns that MOPS function, again, to be technologists and mathematicians, and then support your line of business, so that everybody can have that full funnel view and not be so boxed into just maximizing the impact of their business. So that's what I've been seeing more and more of under revenue operations or business operations, business systems, business services. Anybody that touches technology, models, math tends to fall under revenue operations.
Yeah, which is, you look at Roy's question as well, or comment perhaps, RevOps is, data science and RevOps are starting to overlap a little bit, right? Absolutely. And, some orgs are putting data scientists under the RevOps umbrella. Some orgs are hiring data teams under the CDO, and like the data scientists might just have a dotted line into RevOps. But either way, these skill sets are emerging as critical for RevOps teams to do their job effectively. So just depends on how your org is structured and what you have. So I just want to bring this story of having more full funnel visibility into what's happening across the business to life a little bit. JP and I just came out of our Q3 board meeting yesterday, right? So JP, you've been at Zangre now for what, 4 or 5 months? I'm trying so you've been hard at work at helping us establish our data foundation, and the output of that looks like data and metrics. But how was your experience preparing for yesterday's board meeting, getting your data on point, and then getting us all aligned on what the data is actually telling us about our business?
Yeah. I mean, I'm literally sitting in the room in San Francisco, a room over where we had our board meeting yesterday. I mean, honestly, what a joy. We had a really kick-ass Q3. So this was a little, easier for me because of our growth story was so easy to tell. Okay, regardless of our kick-ass quarter, let me tell you that really using our world-class revenue operations best practices that we're preaching, taking a data-first approach. I made sure that I had the ammo in my pocket to answer the questions that I knew were going to come up. Not just answering the question with the data, but also providing those insights. So what I was able to do really, really quickly is get the executive teams together, and Taylor, perfect question, the KPIs, getting the ammo. We agreed upon our vital metrics. We agreed that we were looking at ARR. We agreed that we're looking at acquisition, new business, growth in terms of upsell and renewal growth. We're a recurring revenue model, as well as churn and contraction. Those are the three inputs that also go into calculating our NRR. So in the past, I've done wild amounts of spreadsheet ops. Everybody in RevCom should know exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about spreadsheet ops, right? Like long nights and weekends of making sure that my end of quarter data was perfect, and that I had this set of data that I could visualize, but it was just kind of a one and done. Setting up this data in using the technology, it was real time. I took a screenshot of a dashboard and used it for our board deck. So as a result, what I could do is I spent more time with the insights, and not just saying, hey, here's where we're entering Q4. Here's our pipeline. All right, cool. But is it the right pipeline coverage? It wasn't just, all right, we have X amount of million pipeline. It was, is this the right pipeline? Is this the right accounts? So that I could, again, bring those insights and not just read the news.
Yeah, I think I just want to put a pin in that, because that is such a key takeaway for how RevOps professionals who have earned a seat at the executive table actually behave, right? They are not just bringing a report based on a request from an executive. They are bringing that report plus an analysis and insight on what that data is telling us about what we should do differently or maintain within our business and our business strategy, right?
Which I could have done. Like I know that my CEO is going to ask, what's our ARR? What's our ARR projection for the rest of the year? I want to have those answers immediately. I don't want to say every single time like Groundhog's Day, okay, give me 2 days. Okay, give me 2 days. As an operator, like Aaron, we've talked about this, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, is when I get asked a question that I can't answer, I completely atrophy. And I will stop at nothing to figure out an answer to this question. And not only how to answer it, but to never rebuild again. So making it so scalable that I can answer these questions really quickly for the next.
Yeah. And there's a question here from Roy too. Curious to get your thoughts on how you think about it. How much of RevOps is ensuring, upgrade of revenue versus new business or optimization, right? Like, are you focused on growth? Are you focused growth of existing accounts, bringing in new business, optimizing processes? How do you prioritize all that?
Yeah, actually, so how much is ensuring the upgrade? So again, we're talking about the output of the data, again, not just reading the news, but bringing the insights. As a RevOps leader, what I would bring is I would bring benchmarks of how much of our pipeline should be coming from growth. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about with upgrade revenue, so growth revenue. If I'm finding that the majority of our new business, the majority of our ARR is coming from new business, and our NRR is kind of hanging out at 100%, then it is my job as a RevOps leader to bring that back to the business across all business units and say, hey, is our product not sticky? Is our product, are just people not using it? Do we need to introduce other features of the product to create more upsell, to create more growth, to create, not just something people are like, okay, cool, I'll pay for this and then, keep it in perpetuity, or just, I'll just let it churn because it's not really important to me. So it is again, ensuring that those benchmarks are there to know what types of levers that every single business unit should be pulling.
So we keep talking about this like nirvana end state of having, awesome data that is giving you instant visibility into how the business is performing. You've got all your benchmarks in place for how we should be performing based on, our phase of growth. How did you actually get here, right? You've been here for 4 months. How did you go about getting everyone on the same page as it relates to these data and metrics, JP?
Yeah, it's capturing every single touch point, benchmarking it, and reporting on it. So every 2 weeks we have we call it our go-to-market synapse. So that is where we bring actuals, we bring the projections, we bring the targets. We have open and honest discussions about where we are as a business, and then we talk about those benchmarks. As an example, we were looking at our lead to pipeline and pipeline to close. If we said, okay, our pipeline to close is 20%. Great. Moving on. Okay, wait a minute. Let's take a step back. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that where we should be? So I came in and said, okay, our pipeline to close, our win rate should be something maybe 25%. Okay, how do we get there? Now let's look at the previous stage in the funnel. Our lead to pipeline. That's actually, it's really high. It should be 50% and maybe it's 75%. So then I can say, okay, because now I have a where we should be and where we're actually at. Now I can have a conversation and say, hey, I think we have a quality issue. We have an SDR to AE handoff issue. So that's what I'm saying. We just got to capture those touch points at every single piece of the funnel. Look at the conversions, look at it to where we think it is and where it actually is, and adjust the process. So now I can say, okay, we have again, an SDR AE discovery handoff quality issue. We're actually putting too much stuff into the funnel. So now that conversion rate is going down, our win rate is going up.
And we're talking about a situation where people actually agree upon the data, right? Like, what have you seen happen when that foundational trust in the data doesn't exist, right?
I mean, that's really hard. How many people? So, Aaron, marketing. I've been on sales. What's our pipeline? And you go to your sales ops person, and they might say, "Ooh, I have this filter in here that's excludes this, sales guy from 6 months ago because I didn't like the way he sold, so I'm just going to exclude that." But marketing doesn't know that, right? So, pipeline is pipeline. New business pipeline is new business pipeline. Upsell is upsell pipeline. So it has to be this is the number. Once we can show that and show it in one single view of exactly what these KPIs are, then we can have the cooler and funner conversations like, are we going to hit their projections? What's our improvement to our processes and product? So as a RevOps leader, I can drive the definitions and say, this is what it is. no arguments, data doesn't lie. Let's have funner, cooler conversations than methodology and SFDC filters, right?
Yeah, I laugh sometimes when our CRO and I disagree on pipeline volume, literally just because the logic we use in our Salesforce Lightning reports is missing a filter, right?
Oh,
it's so simple, but it has pretty significant impacts when you're thinking about your planning for the next couple of quarters. If you have a completely different view on what your pipeline health actually looks like, so couldn't agree more how important it is to align. One more question on this topic, and then we'll get into some of the questions coming in from the audience, right? So getting people to agree, right? We talk about this go-to-market bi-weekly, right? We've talked about the importance of agreement, but how do you actually get to a place where people agree on the number? Very tactically, how do you get people to agree on, say, the pipeline number?
Yeah, I show them, like I have receipts. And by having receipts, I never had receipts before when I did spreadsheet ops, because I would have, Q4 model version 6, version work in progress, version JP's version of RevOps final, right? And that's how I did my math. So when I say I have receipts, I did, measure twice, cut once. So now I'm taking, again, to earn that seat at the exec table, I'm taking a systems-based approach to make sure that it's consistent and repeatable, and has automation in it. So in this case, I've used our tech stack. I've used, Salesforce, Marketo. We have some CPQ light tech stack systems, and of course, Zangre at the core, to set up a data model, populate the right fields with the right conditions, standardizing on the definitions that we've built to ensure that each function, marketing, sales, customer success, finance, has the same output for vital few metrics. So we have one place, single view in Salesforce, soon to be other BI tools, including our own insights tool. This is our ARR. And that's what it is. It's not in a spreadsheet. And then I can show exactly how that's being calculated. So if there's any, misunderstanding with our CRO, maybe he has a spreadsheet that doesn't match. I say, well, here's how it works. Here's the inner workings of it. So I think that's really important to take a systems-based approach.
And there's a few questions coming in, but before we get into the questions, it's one last question for you, the audience, to make sure we capture it, right? Like, what advice would you give to ops pros today, right? People who are on this call, who are trying to, figure out how to earn that seat at the executive table. Where should they start?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, remember, we're all humans. I always thought that, there'd be some kind of, magical energy at the executive table, but we're all just humans trying to solve problems, and it's fun. So you got to remember, if we're all operators, we're just trying to problem solve and have fun. But with that, to earn that seat, you need to build that foundation of growth with that surgical level of accuracy. I make the analogy like we're building a skyscraper, right? So anticipate that, the first time you sit there with your executive team, and you're building that foundation, imagine a year from now, they're going to ask you to build 10 more stories in addition on your skyscraper. If you don't build that foundation to anticipate that and anticipate these, additional requirements, additional questions, then you're going to have to knock down the building every single time you want to build on another 10 more stories. Don't do that. So that's the most surefire way to unhinge a CEO or executive is, slowing down answers or providing inconsistent answers. Anything that hinders pulling levers for growth. Just really make sure to take that time and build that foundation for scale.
And what would you say are some of the core elements of that foundation from your point of view? Like, where did you get started at Zangre?
Data. You can automate and do workflows and have, these really smart mathematical models. I think we should simplify our models and make sure that our data is accurate. Make sure that we have the right fields to capture the right data. And then we can, do the funner stuff. But all about the data and the data models.
Speaking of funner stuff, Roy asked a question around predictability around, upgrades, churns, conversions, right? Like how do you think about getting us to a place where we can actually predict customer outcomes and predict revenue growth?
Yeah, this is one of those it's simple but not easy type of questions. Again, I always back into, we're talking about sitting at the executive table. All right, cool. We need to be at X ARR by the end of next year. All right. Okay. So there's our 100,000 foot view of where we need to be, and then we back into that. Okay, what's our conversion rate for our onboarding to our deal to onboarding? All right, cool. I can ensure that our churn and contraction will go down because I'm looking at our deal onboarding time, and it's more than 90 days. Hey, exec, hey, CEO, we need to get that to 30 days to prevent the churn or the contractions or the lack of, stickiness or lack of growth, or just that, 100% NRR, no growth. We need more onboarding resources. So those are the types of things that are, you don't need a fancy AI engine. You just need to capture the data, look at the conversions, and see if it's all moving towards that ultimate goal.
Yeah, and another example, right? How have we thought about increasing top of funnel leads and conversions, right? We're looking at stage 1 to stage 2 conversion rate, basically on a weekly basis, right? Like when you see something that is off trend, what starts going through your mind, and how do you think about, getting things back to where they should be?
Process, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Back to process. Like, that example of our win rate went up in Q3. Our win rate went up in Q3, and our lead to op conversion went down. And that's how it needed to be. That was what we predicted. That's what we kind of simple funnel math. But this stuff works. If you have again, volume, conversion, velocity at each funnel stage, benchmark it. If it's not hitting, adjust.
Yeah. And Martin, to answer your question more specifically, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It's simply better discovery and qualification up front, so that the leads that the opportunities that the AEs actually spent their time and energy on, because they don't have unlimited time and energy, had a greater likelihood of closing. And we saw that in the data, and it wasn't massive, right? But the lift was from, call it 22% to 25% in a win rate. And that is, it shows up in the ARR number, which is, the North Star for us.
Yeah.
And then the last question from Lindsay before we wrap here: do you consider yourself a deep expert in Salesforce analytics automation, or do you pull cross-functional teams together? How do you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Series A growth, team one here. So I manage the middle lines of business. So I do consider myself a deep expert in Salesforce, Marketo, Eloqua. I've been working with these systems for a very long time. That is not scalable. I think a RevOps team of one is not scalable, right? So we need, we definitely need platform expertise. But I think platform expertise is a secondary. I like to be a little bit more platform agnostic, again, to understanding the data. If you have a grasp on what your data model should be, then you could, pull other functions together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we are 10 seconds to the end of this session. So just wanted to say thank you to JP for being such an awesome representative of RevOps in the world. If you have any questions about how she does this or how she uses Zangre, feel free to drop either she or I a note on LinkedIn. We're obviously available, or you can chat with us in the chat in the event app. Awesome.
Please do. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.